Welcome to Women Empower Active, an initiative started by UR Sportswear to empower women to find their own active adventure. I'm your host, Jacqueline Gross. Today we are interviewing Cobi. She is a yoga instructor, a mountaineer guide, a mountain biker, a climber, and a skier. I hope you enjoy this episode. How did you start being active? Like when you're young, did you come into it later? When was the point where you started doing more like physical sports?
My dad was an outdoorsman, like a hunter and a fisherman. And so he taught me to ski when I was 6 years old. But I didn't, really like it. But when I was in, say, like the 8th and 9th, maybe 7th, 8th grade, we started skiing every weekend. And me and my stepbrother really loved it.
Mm-hmm.
And so then when I was in the 9th grade, we got on the ski team.
Mm-hmm.
And this is in Portland, Oregon. And so as a family, we were skiing a lot, like 2 to 3 days a week. And I really, really loved it because skiing with a trainer, I saw my progress and I was getting better, better and better over the years. And, my dad taught us to earn money to pay for half of our skis, earn money to pay half of our ski boots. And they were, not inexpensive items because we were racing. Mm-hmm. So also was playing water polo in high school. And, but the skiing really was the key for me. My mom lived in Anchorage, Alaska when I was growing up. So I spent my summers going up there and some winters visiting over Christmas vacation. And so those years that I was skiing, I would go and ski at Alyeska in Alaska. And it was like such a steep mountain. And that's what challenged me on the race course, was in the steeps. And so I just felt like, oh my God, I am learning so much here. And I was probably 16 and I said, I'm going to live here someday. But that was just always in the back of my head. So then I graduated from high school in 1990. And in 92, in the summer, I was a river guide on the Deschutes River in Maupin, Oregon. And the summer before, I had gone with a friend, and and I just realized, wow, I'm really strong. Oh, also at the time I was biking everywhere for my transportation. I started doing some triathlons, just short distance ones, but it just was my lifestyle to be athletic, even though I wasn't on a team sport. I wasn't playing soccer, what I thought of as an athlete. So then when I became a river guide, I became really strong. And then from that point, I was like, I want to be stronger. I want to be, a better skier. I really dove into my athleticism in 92, 93. At that time, I met a really close friend and we were into the same thing. And that's also when I started rock climbing. And that is also when I did an outward bound semester course in 93. It was called the Wilderness Leadership Semester. And so I had river guide for 2 years or 2 summers and started rock climbing. And so then I went to them and I got training to be a wilderness leader. So that was rock climbing and sea kayaking and mountaineering and backpacking. And from that point on, I just was very committed to my outdoor leadership lifestyle. And so I was in that industry for 15 years. So it's 92. And then I probably stopped around 2005 is when I kind of gave up that career. But so yeah, that's how I got into it.
Throughout your story you're telling, it seems like you wanted to be strong, or you felt value in being strong and feeling that strength. Is that what kept you going, do you think?
Yeah. Also, this was I grew up in I was born in 72. So this is like the 70s and the 80s. If you think about how women were treated and views of women by men. And so my dad was, we'd look at him now as kind of sexist, but he wasn't. He had high expectations of me. It's like he looked at other women in a sexist way. But with me, it was like, you better be able to do this, So definitely some like proving myself to my dad.
Mhm.
And then also that intrinsic drive to improve and, be cool.
Yeah.
And I definitely hung out with the boys.
Mhm.
When I was younger, I had mentioned that one girlfriend that we got into climbing and mountaineering together, and she was like the first friend that was driven like me.
Mhm.
And so that was really special to have
Yeah.
someone to do it with.
Yeah.
So yeah, I moved to Alaska to ski at Alaska when I was 21. That was like the winter of 93, 94. And then I was up there for 7 years about and really dedicated, to that. Really, it was to mountaineering. I
Mhm.
went there to ski and then I fell in love with mountaineering.
I did want to talk a little bit more about like mountaineering and you getting into it, because you did mention that there wasn't that many women.
It was always very inviting.
Okay.
So like originally I got into mountaineering, in Oregon and the Sierras, where it wasn't like this high stakes environment like in Alaska. And so then and I was really passionate about mountaineering. I loved getting to peaks. And so because I moved up to Alaska in the winter, and one of my very first friends was a guide on Denali. And we were in Girdwood, and he was like, "Oh, let me take you up this cool peak in Anchorage." And it was an awesome, beautiful day, really short days, like the sun is up for only a few hours. And um, um, so initially it was just inviting and fun. And I was meeting all these new people and people that were passionate about skiing and mountaineering as well. And so I did a lot of exploration. That very first peak I did in Alaska with that Denali guide, I mean, we were just going as friends, but that seriously, like a month later, there was a group of people that died on that exact same route. So I learned very quickly that it was serious business what I was doing up there, and I really needed to be careful. And so everyone was inviting. Like I said, there weren't a lot of girls doing it, so the guys were psyched that they had a chick with them,
Yeah.
And so I had a lot of fun climbing, and honestly, the exploration of just cruising up a valley of frozen waterfalls and snow and eventually getting to a peak, and then descending down a peak, whether we had skis or if we were walking, and this is just in around the valley of Girdwood, which is, things are just right there. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I started out just having fun with myself and my friends climbing peaks.
Were you pretty like competitive as a skier? Did you
Not really.
or anything?
I definitely not. There's always been people better than me in the racing. Yeah, I was going to tell you that like I have never been a super competitive athlete. I'm competitive with myself in that I want to improve, but I wasn't. Basically on my very last race of my senior year was the only time I got first place in my race. It was like, oh, okay, that's how it's done. But the reason I got first place is there was a steep icy section, and I had figured out, I had focused on, I want to ski the steeps. I want to be able to make a controlled turn in the ice and the steeps, so I gave myself like specific challenges that I would work on. And I'm doing that now. Like now that I'm into mountain biking this year, I've been taking lessons and, seeing where a skill that I'm not very good at and I focus on it. I try to improve at the skills. And honestly, when I moved up to Alaska, I stopped alpine skiing and I started telemark skiing because I like the technique. I like challenging myself with the technical skills rather than, just boop, 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 easy peasy. And yeah, so I've been a telemark skier since like 93. So again, I'm not very good, but I became really good like 2 winters ago when I got new equipment, and my bindings are actually really firm and I have more control of my entire ski than I did with my old cable bindings. And now I'm like, oh my God, this is awesome.
When you were guiding in Denali, like what like kind of describe that, like how did it work? Like you said, this person like showed up from Texas and then you like talk them through how to do this. Like how was it bad, how was it good? Like kind of go through that a little bit.
Yeah. So what was the best part of it is I met my mentor, a woman named Nancy Pfeiffer, and she was the head guide, and her were professional guides, and they had worked together a lot. But Nancy Pfeiffer is like, everyone learned how to backcountry ski from Nancy Pfeiffer. She was just this amazing woman. She was, I want to say 36 when I met her. I was 24. And so I was the third guide. I called myself the Grunt guide. And, I had lucked into the position. I heard that they needed a guide kind of last minute. And so I just was like gung ho, yes, me, I want to do it. And so the owner, Gary Bocard, hired me, and knowing that Nancy Pfeiffer was going to be on that expedition. So it would, I would have that mentor. And so then, we just like packed and planned as us 3 guides. And then the clients flew in, we met them the night before, checked their gear, made sure that they didn't have too much in their backpacks, taught them, a quick, crevasse rescue. I think we were with them like one day before we flew out to Denali. And, then it's just like huge and magical and amazing. And everyone's dream is coming true, And so at first it's really fun. Everyone's energetic, and but also some things are kind of working out. Like on our expedition on day 1, there was an astronaut that took pictures from space of mountain ranges, and then he was invited to like the Alpine, the Alpine Club. So he showed pictures from space of all these mountain ranges. And so he decided he was going to climb Denali. But on day 1, hiking, taking a load up and then coming back to base camp, he decided to leave. He was like, too risky. I love my job as an astronaut, and I'm not going to risk it. And so he left, so it's sort of like, wow, it doesn't seem risky to me.
Yeah.
And it's also like this international experience because there's people from all over the world climbing the West Buttress. And and you're getting to know the people on your team and the people that you're working with and the people that are climbing the mountain with you. Like, it's just a ton of fun. And then once you get up to 14,000 feet, and this is my experience, once we got up to 14,000 feet, just the stakes became a little bit higher. You're in high altitude, and not everyone can handle the altitude, right? So you're kind of just monitoring everybody's health. And, by that time, it takes, probably a week to get up to 14,000. And so you acclimate, and everyone's got the systems down, and, the guide team, we're taking our roles of melting water and cooking. And then when we're climbing, each of us has a rope team, so there were probably like 10, let me think, about maybe 8 or 9. I think maybe we started out with 9 people because we would have like 4 on a rope team. So that would be 9 clients with 3 guides. And so a total of 12 people, 3 rope teams.
Mm-hmm.
And so at 14,000 feet, first the astronaut left, and then our only woman client left. She wasn't feeling well.
Mm-hmm.
But we were doing a Denali traverse, so up the West Buttress and down the Muldrow. And so that's a really big expedition. Very few parties do that, maybe 3 guided parties per year.
Wow.
And so the head guide, he was assessing, the needs for the way down as we're, ascending.
Mm-hmm.
And so, so he kept me on, like my job was, if anyone needed to go down the mountain, then I took them down the mountain. But he decided that he needed me. And so he got this woman to go down on another trip's rope team. So I felt, so happy that I got to stay. Above 14,000, it just got really intense. Like the head guide, his personality just changed. It was like fun and happy-go-lucky. And then above 14, it was like, he was very serious and he was a jerk and he was direct and just like,
Mm-hmm.
and quick to call you out in, if you did, the slightest thing wrong. And, I'm coming from Outward Bound, where everything's about equality and communication and self-assessment and making sure that the team is a unit and we're traveling together, like that was my training. And so say up at 17,000 feet, the guides, we were walking and visiting everyone in their tents while we were, waiting out weather. And I'd go to one tent and, this would be one story, and then the next tent would be a different story, and like of the plan. And so I just said, okay, let's all get together. And I called a meeting, and I was like, okay, let's all just talk. Let's all get the story. So everyone knows this, the same piece of information. What's the plan, Chris? And in front of everybody, he belittled me and was like, what are you doing? I'm like trying to communicate because different stories are happening, and he put me down in front of everybody, our clients. And so after that, I just felt like the clients scapegoated me. Like I was the one that they could berate. And that's where it felt sexist.
Yeah.
It felt like I'm just trying to communicate and get everyone on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
And Nancy, she was game for it. She was great. This is great, and then Chris's reaction was just really ugly. And then he just kind of stayed that way, up and down the mountain. And so then, the clients would say things to me. And at this point, everyone's tired, right? Mm-hmm. This is like a 25-day expedition. We summited on day 18 and, very successful. And then on the descent, we had a good descent, but it was chaos and the place changed. It's like it's on the West Buttress, it was comparatively a sidewalk. We never had to break trail. Other people would set the route, the fixed lines were set up. On the descent, we were breaking trail, we were falling in crevasses. Wow. And the 2 guides, the head guide and Nancy, he acted like the body probe, and Nancy walked with an actual probe, making sure that each footstep was safe. But we were all on different rope teams. Mm-hmm. So he was, charging ahead, and I was following Nancy.
Yeah, she's testing everything.
Yeah, like she just has amazing skills. She knows how to stay safe in the mountains. And I just watched him going, this is how not to do it. Yeah. And then we were very fast, but getting down. But there were a couple of really big risky places. And the one specifically is we went under this hanging glacier, and we had to, it was the only way to get out. And I was tied to my clients, and they were so tired, and we're all, traveling like 36 hours and
Wow.
with big heavy packs, and, and it's just so mentally tiring besides physically tiring. And we're like under this hanging glacier, and one of my clients that I was tied to refused to put the sled on his back, and he was dragging it, and in between, the sled started getting caught in between these big ice chunks.
Oh.
And I just wanted to cut the rope and run, because here is this looming hanging glacier, there's stuff falling down, and I'm just like right in the runnel. That's what we were walking up and over, were these like ice avalanche paths, because it's breaking all the time.
Oh my God.
That's when I was like, this is not worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Like the $1,000 that I'm making, it's just like, Jesus. But so then we got out of there fine. I did have my closest brush with death was on this trip, the river crossing at the very end. And again, I have to say I blame it on the head guide, because his wife was on the other side of the river, and it's McKinley Bar. It's a mile wide, multiple braids, and it had been sunny for 25 days. It was super high flow.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my error is at the last minute, I think I tightened my belt buckle just out of habit. When you're hiking, you're like, okay, let's go. And I had planned on, as soon as I needed to undo my backpack, and I had a lanyard, so I would just undo it and drag it in the river. And I think that all the weight was just on that belt buckle. And so I couldn't get my belt buckle undone. And so I was carrying my close to 100-pound backpack. And luckily I had 2 sleeping pads on the outside of my pack. And so there was a little bit of flotation, but I got swept away by the river and swam at least about a half mile. And just the river took, way out. And then finally it came back in closer to shore. And I had been a river guide. I knew how to swim rapids. I knew how to swim the river. And so I was so grateful that it was me that swam and not one of our clients, because I knew what to do.
Yeah.
And so I finally got myself over into shallow water. And
what do you do?
I just I kind of got on top of my pack where it was floating, and I just kept my head out of the water, at least like this. And then I was, I was in the main current, but I wanted to get over to that shore. So I stayed in the main current until I went over there. And then I just did some strokes to get over. And then I just put out my arm. And as soon as the river was shallow enough that I could start to feel, rocks, then I was able to stop myself and get on my knees, get my pack up. And then finally I was able to take my pack off. But I'm telling you, a week later, a guy died in the exact same scenario. River swim with a backpack on is not safe. Never attach your belt buckle when you're crossing a river. So, definitely my error, but I felt like the original error, we had already hiked 20 miles that day. We should have slept before crossing. And he also had us cross, at the height of the river. If it's also land of the midnight sun. So it's not like the sun, there is a cool period in the evening, but so I think that was the original error, and then my error on top. But, I just felt, so grateful. I will admit, I totally had PTSD for a good 6 months. I still can go right back to it. It's when I'm, at least then it's the the images played just over and over and over and over and over in my sleep. And it's like, still like, if I need to wake up, my brain will go back to a river scenario. But I love rivers, I was a river guide, and I just don't want that to be taken away from me, and nor did I want to be afraid anymore. And so that was 97. In 99, I got a group of girls that lived in Alaska, and we were the Denali Divas, and we went back there. We did the Muldrow. So I crossed that river twice more because I needed to face my fears. I did not want that fear to control my life. It was just so important to me to just to combat that PTSD and just do it again. That year that I taught for or that summer that I taught for Alaska Pacific, that mountaineering course, it was I taught with Nancy Pfeiffer, my mentor, and it was just a way to heal from that trauma, the trauma of the sexism, the trauma of almost dying. That river swim was just awful, because another thing is, and I lived in Girdwood, but I was guiding with Anchorage people and hanging out at the Anchorage Rock Gym. And it was like gossip. People would come up, people that I vaguely knew. Oh, I heard about your river swim. I'm like, did you hear that I summited and traversed Denali in 25 days? Did you hear about that?
Yeah.
They only cared about the drama. And
wow.
What about the empowerment? Because right now I need it.
You're right.
I think they were proud of me because I didn't die.
Yeah.
But it was just just things like that just ate at me. I just felt like, honestly, I felt like a failure.
Wow.
That I had summited Denali, but that was the PTSD. That was the post-traumatic stress, of that experience. I'm so glad I did it again, because I did it with friends. We had completely different goals. Our first goal was everyone gets back safe. Our second goal, everyone comes back friends. Our third goal was summiting the North Peak. My fourth goal was maybe I could summit the South Peak, and we were super successful. We all came back safe, and we all came back friends, and we got up to about 14.8, but we had terrible weather, and we got like two times we got like 4 feet of snow, and so we were just dealing with tons of snow, and we're on the side of the mountain. There were a couple parties before us, but we couldn't see their tracks where it mattered. We found a little bit of food, which we were happy to, because somebody, bailed, and, we got a little bit of beta, but we were on that side of the mountain alone until we were up at our 14.2 base camp, or I can't remember exactly the elevations. Maybe it was 10.2. It was on Karsten's Ridge, right at the base of the most technical part. The coxcomb is the technical part of the peak.
Okay.
And this party of 3 came up, and it was 2 women and a guy, and they were so happy to see a group of 5 ladies. We were like, we thought there was women. like chunks of hair. Because we were brushing her hair. So that was so inspiring, but it was so much more technical. But we didn't have anyone breaking trail for us. We didn't have anyone there to make our decisions for us. We could not wimp out. We had to just, we did it. We made every decision. It was so empowering. And it was like, I learned more about mountaineering then than I did guiding or on many other peaks. I just felt so successful when I got off the mountain. I was so happy and joyful. It was such a different experience. than when we were successful and
Right.
summited and traversed, such a different feeling. And I've written about it. I call it a measure of success. And, we were women and men, we just lead differently, like women were just a little bit more democratic. We'll take in everyone's viewpoint. We want to communicate. We want to be healthy. We honored people's fears. One of my best friends was on the expedition, and her partner had died in an avalanche. So we let her be the judge of avalanches. We weren't going to make her do something that she was uncomfortable with.
Oh my God, I love
And
that.
she was the most experienced when it came to that.
Yeah.
So, just stuff like that. It was just successful. And I'm still, these ladies are my best friends because we shared this amazing experience together, and we got to be awesome. And it was beautiful.
Yeah. How did you get the group together? How did you meet these women?
Originally my friend said, I want to climb Denali when I'm 30. And I was like, okay, 1999, you and me. And she had moved to Idaho, but she was the first one I called. It's 99. Let's go climb Denali. I wanted to be all girls. And so she couldn't do it, but I had another friend who had the dream of climbing Denali as a vegan.
Yeah.
I was like, good luck with that. But so she was my second person committed. And then we did the Valdez Ice Climbing Festival that year, and met this Valdez chick named Lori. Amy was my first friend. And then we met Lori. And then I had another friend in Juneau that had done a Knowles course in the Himalayas. And she, had, good high altitude experience. And Lori was an amazing ice climber and really aggressive. She was kind of the sporty, racy, aggro one. But I had a permit for 5. And at this point I had 4 of us committed, but I just knew, I knew there was one other person. And it was just this beautiful, magical experience. I just happened to walk a certain way at the university that I hadn't been there in quite a while. And that friend who I said lost her boyfriend, I used to see her a year ago or a year and a half, prior, all the time in this one spot. And she just happened to be in Anchorage. She had been living in Homer and, mourning the loss of her partner. And she just happened to be there. And I was like, Becky, I'm climbing Denali with all girls, and the permit application is due tomorrow. And I've got space for one more, and it's you. And she was like, oh my God. So magic happened, and she joined us. And so it was perfect. So yeah, I just put together this group of ladies because I had guided. I knew how to do it. I knew how to pack the food. I knew I knew all the logistics. And so, so I was the expedition leader, but I wasn't nobody on the mountain was the leader. But I had to make hard calls or call people out on BS, which didn't happen very much at all. But
what would be an example?
Well, like just feeling like someone wasn't carrying their weight, but how I dealt with it is really funny.
Yeah.
We had our token mail. We brought a Ken doll. And so someone always had Ken on their backpack. So this friend that I was like, we've been carrying the extra weight. It's your turn. I ended up like pulling his pants down and putting his arms out and like putting in her sleeping bag. Like, I love you. Just to like lighten the mood after a confrontation. So it was, even there just really wasn't conflict.
Yeah.
We accepted each other's quirks. yeah, that was just my greatest life experience. But I look at the photos, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm such a baby face. I'm 26.
Yeah.
And but I'm so proud of myself and everyone on the team, that we went out and did that. And all of us facing fears. For me, it was the river. On the way in, it was ankle deep and I'm like having a heart attack. But then on the way out, it was above my waist again. And
Wow.
but actually my old boyfriend, he came and helped us with the river crossing on the way back, and that was really awesome. Because he'd done it many times and just had experience, and then he was fresh. He could, we were all worked. The descent coming down was totally epic. We did 3 36-hour pushes to get down.
Wow.
And we were jumping over crevasses that were like 4 feet, 5 feet, 6 feet wide. Like it was really different conditions than my first time.
How did you do that?
I'll have to show you the photos.
Oh my God.
I have a picture of me flying through the air like this, and it was like an uphill jump. So we jumped from one side to like the face, of a crevasse, so we like jump holding our ice axe.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was epic. So we were really tired on the way out. At one point I seriously was like, I wish I had wings. And we had to do that. We had to run under that hanging glacier again. And we went up and down the mountain. So we actually went under that hanging glacier 3 times because we carried a load and then came back and then carried a load again. So actually I did it 4 times the second in 99. And so absolutely nerve-wracking, but I untied from my friends. We took turns making sure that only one person was passing through at a time so that we didn't hang each other up. Nobody was in this firing zone for long. We just did everything right. We probed our footsteps. That's why it took so long. On the first trip down, I had a body probe dude that was like, 28 years old or 30 years old, just going for it. And so we just did it carefully. And, it really felt like we were doing it right. So yeah, it was such a growth experience for me. I will tell you this. Remember that friend I told you about who I started climbing with?
Mm-hmm.
Her name was Kathy Beck. And in 94, she died. She was a forest she was a hotshot firefighter.
Yeah.
And there was this huge fire in Colorado, and she was killed in that fire. And so it was devastating for me. And so, and we had these climbing dreams together. We had said we're going to climb Denali. So like the first piece of my equipment that I grabbed were some of her ashes, and I kept them in my back pocket.
Yeah.
And so when I was able to summit, I put her ashes on the summit, and that was like the most special thing I've done in my life, the most honoring. So that was really significant in my drive for pursuing, my guiding career. I felt like I was doing it for more than just myself. I was doing it for her as well,
Yeah.
And so she died when I was 21, and then I was able to climb Denali when I was 24.
Wow.
And put her up there. So that was super special. Climbing Denali like that the first time, hiking out of a peak, it changed kind of my values in how to mountaineer. And so in 2000, I went to climb Mount Sanford, and we hiked in and we hiked out, and we traveled up Frozen River to get to the base of the peak, to get to the route, and that's how we came down. We were walking on sometimes we were walking on wolf tracks. Other times we were walking on trappers trapper lines
Mhm.
and snowmobile tracks in the river. You know, it was just really different. And so I just felt this self-sufficiency in remote Alaska,
Mhm.
climbing these huge peaks. Like, you know, Denali is 20,000 foot. Stanford is it's around 16,000 feet, you know, and here we were not getting into trouble, not dying.
Right.
There's a lot of skills, and it just made me feel awesome.
Yeah, it would make you feel so confident in your decision making. Like that's such a gift, like to have that at such a young age. Like, okay, I can do this. I made good choices here, and I saved myself and my friends.
Yeah.
I make good choices.
Yeah, I felt that was always the feedback that I got, is you're making really good choices from, you know, rangers. And um, so yeah, it made me feel really good. And so then it was really different leaving Alaska. It was hard to leave that. It was hard to leave kind of that attention.
Mhm.
Um, you know, I was sort of known in Alaska, the Denali Divas, you know, there was an interview and a guy hiked in with us a couple days and wrote about us in the newspaper. And,
Mhm.
um, you know, so yeah, it was really, really special. But I also felt like it was time for me to start teaching full time. And so I went to Outward Bound instead of, you know, to kind of fulfill that life dream. My personal goal with Outward Bound was I wanted to teach semester courses,
Mhm.
because that's what I went on, was like an 80-day semester course. And so that's what I wanted to teach, because they were multi skills, you know, kayaking, rock climbing, mountaineering, backpacking, river rafting, you know, all on one trip. And so yeah, that's why I went to Outward Bound. And it was hard to go from Alaska, mountaineering chick, to Outward Bound. Just had a different culture, and I just found myself to have like this Alaska size ego.
Mhm.
And my ego is bigger than my skill set, you know, like when I came down to the States, all these people were way better rock climbers than me, because there's not very much rock climbing in Alaska.
Right.
And they were just these, you know, awesome little badass chicks who were amazing rock climbers. And also Alaska's pretty redneck backwoods, you
Mhm.
know? And so then I got to come here, and it was like, Outward Bound's all about equality, and there's a man and a woman on each course. As long as there are any female students, there's always a male and a female instructor. And, you know, it's just was so much more progressive in the States. And, you know, so it just took me like some transition time. And I had that boyfriend, so we broke up. So then I was single and having that kind of fun.
Mhm. Yeah.
And there's that transition where I chose to be done with Outward Bound. I injured my back. I was just going for it. There was no like specific injury. I just was rafting in Utah, and it was heavy lifting, but I just kept going for it. I didn't rest. I was living in my van, place to go.
Yeah.
But I was just, you know, rock climbing and, you know, doing yoga on my own, which was a pretty extensive kind of advanced practice, like Ashtanga, arm balances, and getting all, you know, in
Mhm.
there, just trying to be aggro and show offy, you know,
Mhm.
it's just kind of showing off. And I just noticed, you know, I would just stand still, and I was like, something is wrong. But I kept rock climbing. I kept doing these things. And eventually it turned into a herniated disc. And I waited it out for a little while. And Joshua Tree was waiting, you know, 6 weeks to see if it would heal. That's when I met my now husband. And but that was really hard. That was very challenging for me, because I really didn't have any other life dreams. I just wanted to be this mountaineering badass forever. And like I said, my mentor, Nancy Pfeiffer and another woman I met, Nancy Noble, like they were single older women that were kicking ass, being awesome. And that's just what I pictured myself to do forever. And so when my back was injured and I had to get surgery, that was crushing. Because I had to think about other dreams. I had to question who I was, and it took me a while to figure it out. And of course I had to prove myself that I could go back to Outward Bound and I could go back to that lifestyle. And I did for a summer, and I was just like, I love mountaineering. I love rock climbing, and I don't want to wreck my body for them. I want to do it for myself. And so I decided, one thing I learned about myself at Outward Bound is I was a really good teacher. I could explain anything really well. Like, here is this vast glacial valley, and I'm explaining glaciology and meteorology and, geomorphology. I could just explain science because I had worked with the scientists in Antarctica and in Alaska. I just understood. And so I decided I'd get my master's in education so that I could teach the adults. But I couldn't pass the the state teaching exam to be a science teacher because I wasn't trained, in the lab.
Yeah.
So I wanted to teach health, and so I'm K through 12 certified to teach health and PE, and that's where I did my student teaching. And I just could not stand the high school, the bureaucratic politics. I just was like, oh my God, get me out of here. And I really prefer that over 18 age bracket, that, that those people that are like discovering life and discovering themselves, that's what I love. And so that's what I do now. I teach English 101 at community college, and I get to open students' eyes to the world. And so it's through writing rather than mountaineering.
Yeah.
But still it has that same flavor, and it's beautiful. So going from that maiden warrior hero to motherhood, that was a really challenging experience. Like what happened in my brain was really bizarre. And I mean, just going from single to like committing to somebody, and then, getting married, and then, but having that kid, that was the true transition into the new archetype of motherhood. And, now my son is 13, I'm fully in it, but just that first year was hard. And I skied like the most extreme thing I've ever skied when he was 1 year old. It was like I turned it off. People that ask me, oh, should I be a mom? Or, what do you think about this? I always say, you're always the same person. You'll always have the same dreams. In yoga, I teach yoga, as you know, but yoga has language around this. In yoga, they say we just have seasons of life. And as we get older, it's that, say I'm like in fall, when we're young, we're in spring. When we're in our 20s and 30s, we're in summer. And, starting in 40s and 50s, you start going into that fall of life, and then eventually winter. And so the yoga practice has really helped me with, I started doing yoga when I was like 18, and it was very spring, and it was all about self-discovery. And, and it was like with the physical practice, it was like, oh my gosh, what can I do? Look at me, I can do this stuff, or I'm so free in my body. And just embracing that, that self-discovery. And a lot of my Denali diva pictures are us doing yoga out in the mountains, and doing tree pose on the summit of a mountain in Alaska where there's no trees. And in Antarctica, just like these remote locations, and I'm, doing a yoga pose. That yoga practice has always been with me while I've been doing this. And I've so loved, at first I just would do yoga and people would come and do it with me. And, I would kind of guide us, but it wasn't like I was the teacher, and, but now I've been doing it so long, I'm definitely a teacher and definitely really understand the body, because I've studied a lot. I did 1,000-hour teacher training in Pilates. I've done almost a 500-hour teacher training in yoga, but I also study yoga psychology. I love yoga philosophy. It just is, it's just beautiful. Also Ayurveda. And Ayurveda is all about balance. And Ayurveda is the Indian medical system, and it's like a sister science of yoga. And it's all about balance, balancing the, in Ayurveda, it's called Doshas, but it's just making sure that you're, do you know about Doshas?
No, go ahead.
Some people have more of like an earthy constitution. Some people have more of an airy constitution, and others have more of a water constitution. And then we have each of these in our constitution. And I mean, like our digestion and our physical, like for you, you're athletic, that we call is pitta. You're kind of fiery and you work out a lot, right? And so what's good for you is a calm practice, because your probably nature is to be like a little bit fiery, right? Yeah. And so that calm practice is good for you. It might not be what you go for because you're so used to going for the fire challenging practice, but what would be good for you is the calm, the grounding, the cooling. So even for pittas, like a cold soup in the summer to cool your body temperature down, right? Maybe some ice cream. You're like, oh, an excuse. That's how I am. Yeah. So then same people that are kind of airy and flighty, and maybe their head's kind of in the clouds, the people, they're often kind of higher anxiety, but they're just not grounded people. So that's what they need also, is grounding. And, it's just like, okay, come here, ground, get into your body, be self-aware of your body. Okay, now connect to the earth. And then pitta people, I'm like, or pardon, kapha is the earth. I'm pitta kapha, where I'm athletic, but I like gain weight easy, right? Like kapha people were earthy, we're grounded, we're solid. And so for us, kapha people, we need to get our metabolism going. We need fire. So like spicy foods are good for us. Mountain biking is really great for me because I'm getting my engine going. So everyone is typically like, you're probably pitta with one of the others, as like your secondary. And then we have the other, we have all three, but they come out in different ways. Like maybe part of your personality is more kapha, but your body's more pitta, and maybe your mind is more vata, right? Like, and we say that we live in a vata world, meaning go, 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 right? And which thankfully COVID calmed us down.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So Ayurveda just believes in the balance and doing for you what's good for you, maybe not what is natural for you. Like it's natural for me to sit and read a book where it's like, okay, get off your butt and go exercise, right? Or don't stay in bed, go and work out, right? Like I have to force myself to do that, where that's your natural, right?
Yeah.
So you have to force yourself to come to,
yes.
But that's we're aiming for, in yoga language, it's aiming for a sattvic state, just balanced. Yoga has been helpful for me in those transition times of going from who I want to be and who I actually am, like taking both of those into account.
Mm-hmm.
And then also knowing that my behaviors, if I want to be this rockin' athlete in my 50s, my behaviors I have to push myself. I can't get into that kapha too much.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's winter right now, and it's, comfort foods, and I don't feel like going out in the rain, right? That brings on the kapha.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel such a big difference after, winter solstice. I
Mm-hmm.
get more energy. I feel that sun's energy. And maybe that's because I lived in Alaska.
Yeah.
And how they got time back so quickly,
Mm-hmm.
or the light back so quickly. So
we always like to end with like words of empowerment that you would give to other women if you had the opportunity, or you would give to yourself as a younger woman.
I would say a couple of things. I had these great moments. So guiding in Denali and getting that Antarctica guiding gig.
Mm-hmm.
I believed in myself, and I asked for those things. And so 2 things: believe in yourself and to ask, but also to recognize, like, I'm mad at myself for, why didn't I, back then, men could say stuff to you that was belittling.
Yeah.
Why did I hold myself back after they said something? It makes me so angry, because there were so many opportunities that I didn't take. Like one time, a guy questioned how I was guiding this river, and just this tiny little flowy thing, and I was kind of bored. And so I was watching the water, and I was like waiting, and I turned at the last minute. 0 consequences, but this guy was like, what are you doing? Like, he probably powered through that section.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I'm not going to be a river guide here. I don't want to do it. Why the hell not? Why did I hold back because of that friggin' assholes?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then same thing on Denali, when the lead guide, berated me in front of everybody, and then he changed the culture so that they felt like they could say negative things to me or blame something on me. And like, I again, walked away from guiding out of because of those comments. But now I know women that were at that same time guiding in the Himalayas. Why didn't I go ask to guide in the Himalayas? Or why didn't I come down to Washington and guide for AAI or Alpine Ascents? Why did I not pursue those things then when I was doing it? And it's totally, I just had some disbelief. I believed, it's like I would have moments of believing in myself, and then moments of running and hiding from kind of myself and from these asshole men. And, now I understand, now there's this language of feminism of, that was the system that I was in. And so I know I helped people behind me. Nancy was my mentor, and my experience opened the doors for 10 other girls, and now they're out there, and I would be that mentor, and sometimes I am that mentor. I mean, I am in that role in my life as a teacher. But so my advice would be to just friggin' go for it. Like, ask, do it, try. You learn, and you get to experience all of that cool stuff, and honor yourself. Having that yoga practice was helpful, because I was self-aware, and I got to do yoga if I wasn't in the mountains. But yeah, so just go for it, and believe in yourself, and just always ask and seek out There were so many things I didn't do because I didn't even know that they were possible. I didn't know that I could have gotten a guiding job in the Himalayas.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, you were my same age. At the same time, we could have been doing that together.
Yeah.
Why didn't I know that?
Yeah.
So yeah, just seek out those opportunities and absolutely ask for them. Go for it.
I would like to say that I have an example of you being a mentor when I was actually wanted to interview after Ursula told me the story of how you decided to tell this, I think they were like a bike training company, and you said that you would take one of their clinics as soon as they had a female instructor. And so they had to go hire a female instructor for you to take their clinic. And so you're still doing the mentoring, doing it. Like,
yeah. And I was her first client.
Really?
Yeah. And it was awesome. And she's so great. She's so excited that this is her career, and yeah, it was really fun.
That's huge. Ask for female instructors. Do you have any thing that you're working on or you want to plug?
My dream now is I love my career, but I really do love being a yoga instructor. And I have, a Facebook business page, but I would love to put together groups of women to go on trips where we go rock climbing and yoga, or rock climbing, mountain biking and yoga, like someday I want to do that.
Yeah.
The pandemic, I felt like I was kind of shaping it. Right when the pandemic started, I did the Grand Canyon. And so right before the pandemic, I was starting that aspect of my business, trying to put together, trips that combined yoga and sports. And, the pandemic just kind of halted that part of my business, but someday I want to get back to it.
What's your yoga website called?
My Facebook, I call it Core Flow Yoga and Pilates with Cobi. Yeah, Core Flow is what I call my style of yoga.
You can follow You Are Sportswear at the letter U, the letter R Sportswear, or you can check out any of our products at youaresportswear.com. You can follow me personally at Jacqueline Gross. That's JACALYNGROSS on all social platforms. Thank you for listening.